Hello, junior geologist. It's geology time with Gigi. My favorite time of the week. I know I talked about last time that we were going to start on the first 500 million years. We talked about this last time. We talked about the origin of the earth last time. I said we were going to start talking about the first 500 million years, but I want to go over the origin of the solar system a little bit more and the earth in space and time a little bit more. But before we do that, there is some vocabulary that we need to go over. First word is nebula. A nebula is a cloud of dust and gas. And in this case, it's a cloud of dust and gas in outer space. And a hypothesis is a theory or an idea. So if you have an idea that something will work, that's basically a hypothesis. So if I am going to cook something, I can hypothesize what it's going to taste like. If I put all the things for chili into a pot, then my hypothesis or my theory is that it's going to come out tasting like chili. So to test that theory, I cook everything and make it all right, and then I start eating it, and I've proven the law of chili. You put all the things together in a pot, and my hypothesis was accurate, and now I have a law, the law of chili. The prefix proto means before or pre, so when we talk about the proto-sun, it means before the sun was formed. Or if we talk about a pre-plant or a protoplanet or protoplanetary, that's the parts of the planet before the planet was actually formed. A planetesimal is a tiny planet. It's like Pluto used to be considered a planet, but now it got demoted and it's considered a planetesimal now because it's too small to be a planet and it hasn't cleared its path in space. So Pluto is just one of a bunch of rocks in its orbit, whereas Earth has cleared out the whole space. The orbit of Earth is clear and all the rocks in Earth's orbit are stuck onto the Earth pretty much. Condensed means all squeezed together. So if we took a bunch of rocks and smushed them all together, that's condensing them, and in this case they're condensed into planets. Gravity is the force that holds one object to another object. So the way we can stand on Earth, or the cars or buildings, everything can stay on Earth without floating out into space, is called gravity. Accretion, that's a big word. It means pulling things together. So if you walk around your room pulling all your toys into one spot, you are accreting those toys all into one spot. Habitable zone, this is where life can exist or inhabit. You inhabit your home. Squirrels inhabit trees. When rainforests are cut down, or buildings or people go and cut down a lot of forests and build things there, they're taking away the habitat of a lot of natural species to that area. So habitat or habitable means where life lives. Okay, I think that's good on the vocabulary. And when we touch on these words in the discussion, I will remind you what those words mean, okay? All right. Before, we're gonna look at some pictures right now. So in the beginning, the solar system was a nebula. This was just a big cloud of dust and gas. And I know we talked about this before, but I think I want to go into a little bit more details on all of these things. It was just a big dense cloud of gas and dust. And that gas and dust came from other stars. It came from the death of other stars. So when you hear me say that you are a child of the universe, that means you have elements in you that came from other stars, just like Stargirl. Okay, and after this nebula starts to cool down and it starts gathering together and gravity starts pulling all of this stuff together, it pulls it into kind of a disc, like a frisbee or a plate. And this disc starts swirling around and condensing together, and these swirls, like when you let the water out in your tub and it starts swirling around and around, that's kind of what this looked like. Is it's all swirling around and gravity is pulling things together. So all of this dust that used to be tiny particles of dust are now forming bigger and bigger clumps of rocks, and those rocks are getting closer and closer together, and they get together and they condense and they accrete and they form bigger rocks, and then they end up forming planets. And these planets starting out being planetesimals, but these planetesimals and all of these rings start going faster and faster and faster and start slamming into other parts of the other pieces in this disk and colliding and collapsing onto other bigger rocks. And these planetesimals, as they're going around this ring, it's like you moving your hand around in a bucket of beads. So if you moved your hand around in a bucket of beads, you'd collect all these beads in your hand, right? So that eventually forms bigger planets. And these rocky planets, there are four rocky planets, which mean they're made entirely of rock, because all of the rocks from all of the dust that condensed together and formed these bigger rocks and accreted together and condensed together to make planets, those have cleared out the way. So there's just rings. It's cleared out this path, and these planets are getting bigger and bigger. So we have Mercury, that's closest to the sun, and then Venus, which is the next one out, and then we have Earth, which is where we live, and then we have Mars. So those are the four rocky planets. Outside of Mars is an asteroid belt, and the asteroids never did coalesce or never did condense into one planet. And then outside of the asteroid belt, we have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, or Neptune and Uranus. Sometimes they switch places because of their orbits. Uranus is actually an upside down planet, and it goes kind of in a weird elliptical, a weird orbit. The rest of the planets are all within a few degrees of each other, and they all rotate around the sun like a plate. But Uranus comes and it kind of goes kind of cattywampus to the rest of the orbits. And then outside of Uranus, there's Pluto and Charon and the Oort cloud. And we'll talk about the Oort cloud in a few minutes. The Oort cloud, actually we'll talk about it now. So like this is the solar system. In the middle is the sun. This would be the orbit. So say Earth is this dot right here. And Earth and all of the other planets orbit around the sun like this. At the very edge of the solar system are another bunch of rocks and ice, lots of ice. So all these frozen rocks and planetesimals will eventually get shaken loose and fly through the sky and orbit the sun. And those are called comets. And that's where the comets come from, is from the Oort cloud. Okay. Let's go back down to this. Let's see. You see this? Okay. Oops. That was fun. Okay. The sun begins to form. So now we have this proto-sun in the middle of this accretionary disk. This is the accretionary disk. This is the sun. What does accretion mean? Again, remind me. I'll remind you. It is pulling together. So all of this disk right here is pulling everything together, remember? And this sun is called a proto-sun because it's not exactly a sun yet. It's just getting hotter and hotter. and starting to produce energy. It's starting to burn up, and atoms are smashing together and creating energy. Okay. Then this solar system forms, like I told you, it was getting planets all together, smushed together. And then outside this disk is frozen cometary nuclei. Nucleus is a very center of something. So like in your home, your mom would be the nucleus because she is the one who holds everything together. So you can go home and tell mom she's a nucleus. And tell her it's a compliment though, because Gigi said so. Okay, the Earth in the solar system is the only planet that is inhabitable by life. We are the third planet from the sun, which means, like I said, we have Mercury and Venus and then the Earth. And the Earth is far enough away from the sun to where it's not going to burn up or be too hot, and the atmosphere isn't going to burn up, and all the water is not going to burn up. And we have trees, and it's rainy today, so we have, Earth has water, and the other inner planets don't have water like we do. So the Earth is the only planet in the solar system that is inhabitable, but there are other planets outside of our solar system and other solar systems and other galaxies that can be inhabitable.